Welcome back everybody. Now I know it's been a while since we filmed in here. We've been busy outside on a whole heap of projects, and to be honest it's taken a fair while to clean this back corner of the shed up after those projects. But this episode's all about a follow-up on our cheap eBay portable diesel heater that we did an installation on our Jayco Swan just over 12 months ago. Now the response to that video has been incredible. The amount of views it's had has been insane. And I often get the same comments and questions back. So 12 months later, I'm going to give some feedback on this heater. How's it going? How does it work? Is it the correct thing to do? Address a few little errors we made in that video, but also include a few little modifications or alterations you can do to get these things working really, really good. So come along as we do our long-term review on this heater and a few little tips and tricks we've learnt along the way. Now for those wondering, this is an eBay 12 volt portable diesel heater. It's basically got all the internals that you get with a typical built-in diesel heater. However, it's packaged into this nice simple box you can just carry around, which makes it fantastic for those of us with camper trailers where storage is an absolute premium. If you go and do a built-in one, that takes up valuable floor space. And given the mild climate we're in over here, we'd only use this maybe half a dozen times of the year, and only for off-grid. Because if you're on a powered site, you're not going to use one of these, you're just going to use a simple little $20 electric heater. These things are fantastic, they heat it up really quick, and you don't need to worry about a thing. With the cover off, and for those not familiar with these units, you have the standard control panel on the front, a self-contained diesel tank up the top, and this will last you for around about 3 nights I've found, depending on how hard you run it. Here is your diesel injection pump. That's the unit that does the click, click, click as it pulses the diesel into the heater unit underneath. And this is what would normally get built into your caravan or camper trailer. The most important thing is to make sure it's got a single duct outlet. You can get ones with 4 outlets, but unless you're using it in a shed, something like this, it's not going to be worth your while, and you might as well just do a built-in unit. Because it's so much easier just to have a single duct that you route up inside your camper trailer and you're ready to go. Now, is it easy to use? Well, once you get your head around this silly little control panel and the crazy instructions that come with it, yeah, it's pretty straightforward and not a bad thing. I generally tend to just use the remote because this is located under the van. You simply turn it on with the remote, and another thing that always comes up is you can't have this located outside because the difference in temperature between inside and outside doesn't work. Well, with these, you don't use the temperature control. All you simply do is adjust the pulse rate either on the machine or on the remote with the up or down button, and that's basically like a temperature control. You just make it go up if you want it a little bit warmer, or you wind it down if you want it a little bit cooler. And that's simply the best way to use these units in a portable situation. And now for the important one, safety. These units burn very, very clean. However, when they get old or they get little blockages in them, they may start running very, very rich and creating plumes of black smoke. And that's where you're going to get into a little bit of trouble. One thing I somehow did incorrectly in the first video is I put the exhaust out the rear of the unit down the bottom here. And this is where the air intake is on the rear of the unit that goes through and out the front into your ducting. Please put the air intake on the rear of the unit. The exhaust you then want to shoot out through the front or to the side or somewhere like that, so that the exhaust gases are as far away from this fresh air intake as possible. Now with the exhaust, as I said, you want to run it out the front of the unit where you have your sealed duct coming out, which will go to your camper trailer or into the space that you're heating, and that allows the exhaust gases to be as far away from the intake on the rear as possible. Now another safety factor is these exhausts can get quite hot, and if you are camping in a dry climate, there is a risk that the exhaust could ignite any dry grass you have around. And there's been a recent case here in Australia where someone was using this to heat their tent up, the ground caught on fire and it burnt the tent down. So you have to be very, very careful and conscious about where you're putting these heaters on the ground. Now I've got a solution to that, and we'll do that as part of the modifications in this video, which will make it a lot safer to use and more practical for you also. Now, just to make sure you're nice and safe, I'd highly recommend you install a carbon monoxide detector, such as this one you get from Quell. Now just be careful because there are actually two types. The first I got from Bunnings, and it has living rooms and bits and pieces like that on it. And if you read the back of it, it clearly says it can't be installed in an RV or a caravan. So make sure you get the one that is clearly suited for an RV, caravan or camper or something of that description. Now the recommended mounting height is around about eye level or 1.5 meters. Now this is a little bit tricky inside a camper trailer where you don't have anything solid above that rough 1 meter sort of datum height where the canvas all starts. So you can actually install these as a freestanding unit, and they say just to make sure that it's at least 1 meter above and it's not too close to the outlet or the source of what you're trying to record. So you're not going to go and sit this right next to your gas stove. And you're also not going to mount it right next to the outlet of where the air's coming out from your heater as well. Quickly jumping into our Jayco Swan, the bench heights in here are quite low. They're much lower than your standard kitchen bench, so they're well under the 1 meter maximum limit if you're going to do a freestanding install of the carbon monoxide detector. So in our case, I think we're just going to do a freestanding installation over here on the bench. That ticks all the boxes. It's more than 30 to 50 centimeters away from a corner. It's below 1 meter. It's out of the way and it's not likely to get knocked over and damaged. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room with these portable diesel heaters, and that's this exhaust. It has never been resolved by any of the manufacturers from an installation point of view. Because the heater unit sits on the base of this cabinet, and these are designed to be mounted up high, and you can run your exhaust out under your camper trailer or your caravan or whatever you're installing it in. It's really, really tight to get it out under the unit. And that's where we did a modification in the original installation of putting a copper elbow so you can get the exhaust to run out from underneath the unit. The big issue is this exhaust pipe, which just dangles and hangs out and does whatever it does. Also, when it comes to pack it away for transport, I don't think you really want to be bending this pipe up and down all the time, because you're eventually going to fatigue the metal on the pipe and break it. So I've been trying to come up with a simple solution to this that doesn't completely reinvent the wheel, but it makes it a little bit more practical. So let's get into some modifications you can do at home on these diesel heaters to make them a little bit easier to use and much more portable. Now, the first thing that most people do is they order a muffler, and that comes with a little kit that has brackets and clamps and whatnot with it. But I highly recommend that you buy another kit, which I'll put in the description below, and that includes the Muffler Kit, a new and improved intake filter, which is nice and open. It's not like the silencers that come with these units that everyone knows does restrict the airflow in through the unit and can cause some sooting issues. You also get an extra run of intake tubing, which we probably won't use in this instance, but you also get another length of exhaust tubing, and that's what makes choosing this kit over a standard muffler the best way to go. Also noting the exhaust will be a little bit longer, I've come up with this little contraption, which I'll show you shortly, to suspend the exhaust pipe and the muffler to make sure it's not sitting on the ground. With the heater on its side, you can see that the exhaust comes out to the front of the unit and the air intake comes out to the rear of the unit. Now with the exhaust, you simply have this pipe that sort of just hangs around and there's no way to easily take it on or off. So the advantage of having this second length of exhaust pipe is we're going to shorten this and fix it onto the elbow that comes out of the unit. You then have this sleeve which will protrude out of the unit, and that will allow you to join a full piece of exhaust with the muffler on the end that you can take on and off the unit. Now, to join the two lengths of exhaust pipe together, I've got a simple 25mm copper joiner, and it has a tight compression fit onto these sleeves at the end of each exhaust pipe. And to be honest, you don't even need to use exhaust clamps. You could simply put it on, pull it off, put it on, pull it off. Now I'm going to shorten the existing exhaust pipe because we've already cut it to go onto the elbow here. But you essentially want to put your joiner on and then measure back the distance you need to get it back to this elbow, cut it off with the angle grinder, and then, as I did initially, use a little bit of exhaust putty just to make sure it all seals up and clamps back onto the elbow that comes out of the unit. And then comes the secret ingredient to make sure you don't burn your campsite down. We're going to sleeve the exhaust pipes with this Cool Wrap heat protection product. Now this is a fiberglass heat wrap that you simply wrap around the exhaust tubes that come out of your diesel heater. It's very much the same as what you would do on a performance exhaust of a car or truck or anything like that. And what it does is it insulates the pipe to stop the heat transfer outside, keeps it running out to the outlet of the exhaust, and greatly reduces the heat transfer out of the unit itself to make sure that it doesn't ignite any dry grasses or vegetation that you might be camping in. It comes with stainless steel ties that you put onto each end of the tape once you've wound it on. And given that you can get this kit for under $20, I think it's really good peace of mind to make sure that the installation is as safe as it possibly can be. Now, another thing to note is you can also use this product for a fixed installation where you run the exhaust under the floor of your camper, caravan or RV. And what this does is it means that there's no risk of the exhaust sitting on the plywood surface of the floor and potentially damaging it or igniting it. And here we have our piece of shortened exhaust pipe ready to go into the heater. I put a little kink in it because that's how it works with our setup. And you also want to flatten out the corrugations on the end. That will flatten it out and allow you to clamp it on and seal it to the bottom of the unit a lot neater. In our case, we've got the copper elbow that comes out, and this allows it to slide in and then be clamped up. So before we install this, we need to get that exhaust wrap on. Now, I've never done this before, so let's see how it goes. I'm going to run the wrap around the copper joiner piece, and that will affix it onto this pipe as well. So that's solving two problems in one. So it should be pretty straightforward. It's just a case of putting the first lot of wrap around and then doing up the first stainless steel tie to secure it onto the pipe. Then it's a case of just wrapping it around and around and around so you've got a nice, neat and even covering onto the pipe. And then we'll do the same. We'll put the stainless steel tie onto this end to secure it on to make sure it doesn't come back off. So it should be a simple case of just wrapping it around. I'd say 1.5 times so that we've got it all started. And then we'll taper it off about 2/3 of the width of the tape. And that will allow it to start winding on to the pipe as we go around, and I can get my stainless steel tie around and secure it so that I can keep wrapping the tape onto the remainder of the pipe. So then you just get your tie, you put it on, and then like a zip tie, you just loop it through. Get it all nice and tight, and then you can trim this off once you're all done. So now we'll just tightly wrap the rest of the exhaust. I believe you can also soak this wrap so that it's a little bit more malleable when it's wet. You would do that with a larger exhaust. I don't know if it's necessary with these tiny little objects that you're working with, but I'll let you know when I get to the end if it doesn't pan out. Now it's a case of just cutting it off with the scissors. And then we'll put a clamp on this end as well. So if you are doing this from scratch, my recommendation is to put a hole into the front of the unit on the frame here. So there's a hole where I can run the exhaust pipe out, and that keeps it all nice and tidy. The units don't come with them, and there's not really a great deal of clearance to tuck it in back underneath these legs of the unit. So get a hole saw, put a hole in it, and then you can easily slide your exhaust out through the hole. I've got a slight problem now in that the hole's a little bit small to let these tyres go back through. So I'll clearance it a little bit and then install this.
A few moments later.
Now that was a little bit tricky, trying to squeeze all that through the existing hole that I had. Just check that the hole you make in the front frame is big enough to accept not only the exhaust pipe and the insulation, but also the stainless steel tie that goes onto it as well. It'll have to be somewhere around the 30 to 35 mil diameter mark. Now while we're down here, I did look at replacing the air inlet for the burner as well. Now there is one very slight issue with these portable heaters. Again, coming down to the lack of clearance to the underside of the chassis that all the equipment gets mounted in. The silencer that comes with the kit that we took the end off and just put a mesh on the inlet to make sure nothing can get inside, it fits really neatly through the hole on the rear of the frame and takes its air from the outside of the unit itself. So that works pretty well. Again, have a look at the original video to see how that got installed. Now the one big issue with this updated air intake is that it's too big to fit under here. And from that point of view, you could put little spaces on the bottom of the cabinet and whatnot to lift it up, but it's just adding another thing that makes it more complicated. I did look to fit it on the outside and just replace the air inlet that goes in, but it's a little bit clunky again, and to be honest, this works fine as it is. This is the air inlet for the burner, not for the actual whole unit itself. And my thinking is, if this is sitting really down low and you're in a wet environment, there's a likelihood it could be sitting in the mud or sucking in moisture or water, which will affect the operation of the machine. So for now, I'm leaving this off. We're going to leave the inlet exactly how it is. We've updated the exhaust, so now we can tip it over and get into the fun stuff. So once you stick the removable portion of exhaust on, you end up with this big floppy thing hanging out the front, which is then sitting on the ground and potentially causing a fire again. Now we don't want that. So I've come up with this real nice, tidy little contraption, which is simply an eye bolt with a threaded end that essentially bolts onto this 90 by 90 internal post bracket. I'll put the link to both of these with the product numbers for Bunnings if you want to go and get one yourself. But the idea of this is it's a nice, simple mount. It's got a reasonable amount of weight. It's got a loop that your exhaust can pass through, and this will simply support it and lift it up off the ground. It's probably very unnecessary to wrap the whole entire exhaust, but there was just enough in the kit to do it. So it stiffens it up and it makes it look a little bit nicer, and it's also going to be a little bit safer as well. So now it's a case of just slotting this into the coupler we've got at the end of the heater. And we've now got a much nicer setup. You can obviously manipulate this pipe to get it to sit however you want, but at the end of the day, I think this is a much neater little setup. It gets the exhaust as far away from the heater as possible. It's also so much nicer to be able to pull this off and store it away while you're traveling as well. Now we run a 2-duct system with our setup. We have this duct permanently installed in the van, and this goes to an outlet in one of our cupboards, and then this portion here has a cap that seals it up when we're traveling, and then when you want to use it, you release the cap and this pops down through the bottom of the floor, which I'll show you shortly. Now when we did this, I couldn't find a joiner that would link the two lengths of duct together. So I've simply used a section of PVC piping that is a joiner that allows the duct coming out of the heater to connect into the duct that goes into the van. Now a few of you were a little bit concerned about the heat coming through the duct melting the PVC. That never happened and it's been fine. It hasn't distorted. I've checked it after running. It's not even soft or anything like that, so there's no drama there. However, there is actually a joiner that I have found over the last couple of months. So I'm not sure if these joiners have been around for some time or if they're only something fairly new because of the diesel heater craze that's going on. But you can now get a duct joiner that allows you to join your two lengths of duct together. It's obviously heat rated. It's the same material that's used on all the vents and the outlets, and it works perfectly. Now the one last thing you might look to simplify is this control panel. Now if you just wanted a nice simple heater operation, what you can do is change to one of these rotary dials. It's got a simple on and off button, and then you simply turn the dial to increase or decrease the flow to get the heat to whatever temperature you want to operate it at. Now this comes with a fairly generic standard plug that simply plugs into the wiring harness where this plugs in. You put this on and then off you go. I think for now I'm going to leave this on because I do like using the remote control. The one disadvantage of this, when you have the heater positioned underneath a camper van or a caravan or something like that, is that you would then need to reach under to adjust this dial. It's not the end of the world, but the remote makes it a little bit simpler in that you can quickly come out and bump it up or bump it down or turn it off when you're ready to go to bed. There'll be a link in the description. I got this from Carl's Cool RV. They do all your fans for your fridges and stuff like that, which is another job I've got to do down the track. But you can also get these on eBay as well. They're everywhere once you start looking. Now under the camper, we simply have a cap that releases from the floor, and that reveals the internal ducting. And then it's simply a case of taking the duct from the heater and connecting it up with the duct that goes into the camper. It really is that simple. You turn the unit on, you run your exhaust out, and you're ready to roll. And for us, you can see where the remote comes in handy because you can simply control the unit from the outside instead of having to reach under and turn any dials around. Well, I hope you enjoyed this update on our portable diesel heater. No, it's not going to be for everybody. We live in a fairly mild climate here, so it works perfect for us, where if we're camping off grid, we can quickly throw it in the van, connect it up, and we've got a beautiful warm space when we're sleeping at night. Now we've done a few subtle little modifications here which make it a little bit better to use. Hopefully it doesn't complicate it too much, but on our next camping trip, I'll show you how it's all going. Now stay tuned for the next episode on the Swan, because I've got some sealant here. We're going to go through and reseal the roof. I did one corner late last year as an emergency repair before we ducked out because we found it was dripping all the way down onto our lounge area, and that worked perfectly. So I'm going to do the rest of it now and show you how it's done. So stay tuned for that. There's also a whole list of projects that I want to do over the next coming months now that the pool's under control and we've got a few things out of the way. So stay tuned, there's plenty more content coming along very, very shortly. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, put a few comments down below. If there's some advice or suggestions you still have for these diesel heaters, I know there's a lot out there. I think it's important to share it around with anyone that might be watching. I think we're starting to address some of the safety concerns that people had, and also look at addressing some of the more practical problems that these units have, given that they're not terribly resolved. We'd also really appreciate if you could subscribe to our channel. It helps us greatly. We're trying to grow this thing. I do work full time. We've got kids sport and all that stuff going on, but I try to squeeze in as many projects as I can in the months as we go along. But until the next episode, thanks for watching. And as I always say, get out there, stay safe and have fun. Catch you next time.